Greetings, everybody, and welcome once more to Discussing Tabletop. It is, of course, April 12th, 2025. I hope you're ready to dive into everything.
Never.
My sound. Okay. I thought I checked my sound, but I had to check it again because it was sort of like I couldn't remember there for a second. So, yeah. Yeah. I mean, OBS looked like it was saying stuff like that.
Yeah, that's usually a good indicator.
Anyway, got some interesting things to talk about, of course, and we're gonna, I guess we should dive into it, because, we want to get a little bit of time for our deeper discussion probably today. So, how about we dive into it? We can maybe chat amongst things as we go. So,
yeah.
Here's the thing. This is interesting because I've heard, like, a mixed bag of opinions on this, and there's a few people I still want to hear their opinions on, but, now we have Jeremy Crawford leaving D&D. So it's sort of like the three big names, which were synonymous with our time from 3rd edition into 4th edition into 5th edition, are all gone now.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that there aren't people there that have worked on a lot of these things, and aren't some people that can do some good work there. It's just that, like, we don't have anybody from the old guard leading things, which...
Yeah.
It's not necessarily a bad thing. I did put you on it. This is the screen hardware. But it is something that personally, I feel is a little worrying. But I think the idea is, from what it sounds like, is most likely what happened is probably a lot of these people were given basically the option of very nice retirement packages. So it wasn't like, from the sounds of it, these people weren't forced out, at least Jeremy and Chris, but basically they were presented, you could take this retirement package, and it looks really nice, because it's probably the big corporation thing of, these people have been here for a long time, they've got a lot of, like, you know, raises and stuff like that, they've got a lot of pay, we can get people to pay less. And so,
yeah,
pay a little
okay,
bit,
so they were given these kind of things?
We don't know for sure, but it's kind of on the assumption because of the way things have been going with Hasbro, and both of them retiring at the same time, it hints at something like that, you know?
Yeah.
Again,
Yeah, no, and that's a very common thing that companies will do. I mean, that happened at my high school. They did that to, like, cut some costs for some more common teachers. They give them a big bonus to leave.
It's cheaper to pay for the retirement kind of side of things sometimes than to keep paying them over time, you know? And again, these people did a really good job putting out 5th edition, 5.5. I think we both have definitely had our huge complaints about 5.5 and a lot of the issues, and it comes down to they should give them more time. But I do feel like with the time they were given, they did a pretty good job. You know?
Yeah. Do you want to know what I think? I think this was negotiated back when they were doing all those big layoffs. And they probably were like, no, we need to stay through this new book. And they probably were, well enough liked and understood that, yeah, that's probably a good idea. And so they were given probably this retirement package. That's purely speculation on my part, but that's my thought. Yeah. Basically, they've been laying off people left and right. Hasbro. I think they've done 2 rounds of layoffs.
Yeah, but again, it's now we've lost both the creative director and the game director, which is pretty big, though, too.
Yeah, and who was the other guy that left and who was saying really bad things about it when he left?
I thought he was one of the art people. Was it Mike Burles? I don't remember what he was.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, he had some controversy behind it because he ended up getting fired.
Yeah.
Which was kind of bad. But yeah, he was senior manager, researcher on the design team. So, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, now Mike's at least got a new job. Last year,
yeah,
I
he's with Chaosium.
Chaosium. So.
Yeah, but I honestly think it was he probably was a lot more because like he was fired around that time as well during the second round of layoffs, if I remember correctly.
Probably what was happening is there may have been talk of the two of them even independently retiring at some point in time. Because I think this is for a different kind of thing, but I heard someone talking about this, how companies change and evolve over time, so you might be there for long periods of time, but the direction and shift of how things work in the company could change enough that it's not the company you want to work at anymore. And honestly speaking, with how things have been going on over at Wizards, I can see Wizards being a different place to work at now. And, you know, even if you've been there, even if you love the game, it just might be like, you know, you just don't want to deal with this stuff anymore. You know, you're not necessarily like saying like, oh, like again, is this direction bad for Wizards? I feel like it is, but it doesn't necessarily mean it is, you know, in a lot of ways.
I think it's a very bad sign that their lackluster book ended and everyone who has been well known and well loved and well received has left.
Mm-hmm. The thing is,
it's like we have this somewhat poorly put together book that was clearly just done too quickly. And now the two people who probably have the best chance of fixing it are leaving.
It's also that thing of like, they're both not wrong, and it's a bad position to be in when they're like, this is the most successful launch ever. Well, it probably still was, because...
Chris Perkins, I think, said something along those lines.
Because the difference between popularity when 5th edition came out and this came out, it's very different.
Yeah.
D&D was an entirely different thing when 5th edition came out, you know?
Yep. It's still, I mean, I remember it still being, it was like on the rise of popularity, but it still wasn't like, role-playing games still weren't all the way there.
Yeah, it took all this time and a lot of momentum to build it to the force that, yeah, if you weren't the best, like, sales thing of all time for a release, I would be surprised with how big more popular they've managed to get her.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, so Crawford's got a little bit more in the month, but this is definitely like a shift, because though they've been around forever, they've been really the driving force behind a lot of the ideas and directions of 5th edition.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious what's going to happen now. You know, it was one of those things is, with at least them still in Wizards, I felt like even if I'm not big on what's happened with 5.5, I thought it was at least in hands that could go in a good direction. Now, are the people that are replacements going to be able to fill their shoes? Maybe, but I don't know, and I'm less confident.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay, I looked it up, and it is true that it seems that 2024 book sold more than in like its pre-release than 2012 did in 2 years, which honestly sounds believable to me. I don't know if those are with their weird inflated numbers, but
it would make sense for me though too, because the thing is, 5e came out, and it was like a year before my group actually got into it and got away from Pathfinder. It was like a half a year to a year. It wasn't right away, because 4th edition, as much as we enjoyed it, was such a departure. I think no one was like, those of us that were in the community weren't, like at least my group, weren't confident in 5e necessarily. And even when it came out, I think we played a little bit of it here and there, but we never switched over properly.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't capture us. It wasn't until much years later.
I mean, it also didn't help. It also didn't help that people were really skeptical of 5e after 4e.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I remember that was a whole thing too, because like everyone loved 3.5 or 3 and 3.5. 4e was just such a drastic shift that people really didn't like it. And then 5e came out, I could totally see people weren't ready to jump aboard and try it right away because of 4e. And required
sort of
people
like,
testing the waters a bit.
It took me so many years post 4e to recognize that, like, some of the stuff that it's like I did enjoy playing some 4e, but it was a very different kind of game, and that's why my group switched to Pathfinder, because we wanted something closer to 3.5. It's not that we didn't have fun, but we wanted something like what we were used to, rather, you know? It's like, oh, this is fun, but it's kind of weird and different. And nowadays, I recognize 4e and like it a lot more, because also, like, you know, you can pick up a VTT and actually, like, do the shit you need to do in that game.
Yeah.
It's so much more convenient. But then, you know, this is the environment which has led into 5e, and so, yeah, I can see that it took some momentum to get people back into it. 4e probably threw people away at that point in time that were part of this entire group. How many people, like us, went to Pathfinder? You know, it did gain momentum, and places like Critical Role and all these other things brought it back. You know, it really brought it back to the forefront and brought us back 5e, but that took time. And so, again, it's not a good comparison, period.
Yeah.
But
I mean, comparing it to Tasha's is probably a better idea, and that was quite laughable, apparently. Like,
but
Tasha's Cauldron of Everything sold more than D&D 2024 did in the same period.
Yeah, Tasha's had a lot of stuff that people really liked, and, you know, previewed a lot of interesting things. So
yeah,
I think
that I think shows more about how well 2024 did than comparing it to something like 2012, because 2012 had a lot of other things going on. It was a different time. There were different D&D had different popularity. It wasn't as mainstream. It was coming off the back of an edition people considered worse or less fun. You know,
and again, I gotta say, Chris, Jeremy, these people were at the forefront of 5e becoming the juggernaut it was, and so you know, all respect to them. I hope them the best, but you know, it kind of saddens me that we have to find out what's going on next.
Yeah, I'm just not expecting much good to come out of them. I mean, they're hiring on a bunch of new people. Like, they've gotten rid of everyone who was good. I mean, they've gotten rid of all the people who, you know, were... I mean, they got rid of all the people who collaborated with Olirant, you know? Like, they couldn't even do that again because there's no one there. No one's left, you know? It's just like, you know, like, what are they going to do now? Just... Cool, I mean, like, hire some random person off the street and say, hey, write me a D&D book. Write me the next hit.
I get the feeling that Larry won't work with them, and probably speaking...
Oh, I don't think they work with them again, if they were offered.
Most studios that would be of Larian's pedigree might think twice before diving into something as deep as a Baldur's Gate for, you know.
Yeah.
Certainly speaking, doing something that's, you know, a little less involved, easy game, something like that. I can see some studios doing that for, honestly, you know, get a little profit. Use the name recognition of D&D. But
yeah, no, I don't. Well, yes, and that's the thing. Like, I honestly think there's going to be a lot of stuff. They're not going to do another big D&D sponsored video game for a while. They're gonna, you know, people can use D&D as a base, like Solasta did. I mean, Solasta updated. You know, I still need to play their updated, their new adventure, but they got like a DLC that released, like, you know, around the time I actually first played it. You know, and that's uses D&D rules as its base. There's actually some differences, but it uses it as its base.
Yeah, I think we do have to kind of wait and see. And, you know, again, lack of confidence is one thing, but they'll prove us wrong, and someone's going to step up in Jeremy and Chris's shoes and do great things with 5.5. I would always hope that.
Assuming they don't get fired for being the only subsection of a bigger company that makes money.
Well, I mean, like, technically speaking, they do make money, but they don't make money like Magic, and they don't make, well, I don't think anything else.
Well,
makes money.
yeah, that's the thing. I'm saying Wizards makes money, and yet they fired more people from like Wizards than any other department. You know, it's like that's why that's the big thing. It's like, okay, you got two good people leaving, and the policy over the past few years have been fire everyone who's doing a good job. You know, It's like, okay, well, I do not expect a lot out of Wizards and Hasbro, because if that's going to be your policy, then yeah.
Yep. Again, I do think this will be like, if at all else, it's probably not going to be a rapid decline. It'll be a slow descent into some kind
it's gonna
of
be,
publishing.
It's gonna be a slow burn. It's kind of interesting. I'm actually curious. I would love to see if actually I'm gonna look into that. If Paizo has gotten an increase in sales after 2024.
Interesting. I'd be interested in that too. Well, we can talk a little bit about the next D&D product, because this I want to mention it because there's some interesting things that are going on here that are a little different and outside of bounds, and maybe stuff like this will help them. So we get the Dragon's Delve book, which is the dragon-based adventures, and there are two things that stand out here. First off, this article here, I'll share, talks about there are two adventures that are going to be in here that will be set around being more solo play. I haven't seen a lot of published solo play from Wizards. Also, then here's a thing that they are also experimenting with a lot of interesting art styles, which feels like it's something that we've seen more so with things like these secret layers from Magic. A lot of these weird art styles. Yeah, the little gold dragon thing here that a picture of that's going to be adorable gold dragon. Cute. That's art that is official to the Dragon Delve book. Mm-hmm. That's how variety it is, which is so interesting. And a variety of styles too.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it is the first time that they have advertised one-on-one play, which is interesting. Though again, it's not like it was outside of options. They're saying the article says here, which I didn't really dive into the D&D Essentials. So I'm assuming the Essentials had some stuff for low player games.
Yep.
And then of course, I'm not gonna lie, the dragon art is all very interesting and very unique styles. I find that it's interesting that they're going for this. This feels... It's interesting, but different than they normally do. I guess that's the way I want to put it. I don't think it's bad, but I'm interested in the shift if it means because normally most RPGs tend to have a very unified style. Though different artists, they all kind of stick to a general kind of style of things. Mm-hmm. Pathfinder has a certain style, Shadowrun art has a style, World of Darkness now has a style. That can change in between editions, but usually within one edition, there is one style, generally speaking.
Yeah.
Because it gives a feeling of it. This gives different styles, so I'm curious as what this means though for the feel of 5.5 going forward.
I mean, I think there's a very obvious answer to this, actually.
Okay.
Mike Mearls was the creative director. He's gone. He probably worked a bit on 2024, so because a lot of that was done a lot sooner before he even got fired. And now, we have a new art designer, and they're kind of testing the waters. A new creative director who's probably testing the waters with different kinds of, messing around with stuff. So. I don't, because the creative director, as far as I'm aware, does handle, art stuff.
It's one of those things that's sort of I don't mind it in the, here, but what I worry about is that, when you're trying to express your game and game worlds, sticking to one style can help express that very much so, having a unified style. And not having that, I don't know, again, it's also I would think I would prefer not having a unified style if I have a different style in every book, too. well, there's a bunch of different styles in one book. Is it meant to express different emotions for different adventures? Like, again, this is the me being inspired by art person, you know, for when I'm thinking about games and stuff, because that always does come up in my brain. You know, what does it mean? How?
Mm-hmm.
It's another one of those things of, like, there's interesting stuff in this book, but I don't know if it's good or bad.
Okay, so creative directors sometimes can also be the art director, but not always. So I don't know if that, maybe I'm overstepping my thoughts there. I just was looking that up.
Mm-hmm.
So they may have a separate art director who's also just testing the water. I mean, hey, the art director could also be new. They fired a bunch of people, so who knows?
Yeah. The art looks nice. I can't say
I know it is. It doesn't look bad. I just think, honestly, to me, D&D has had a very consistent look for years.
Yeah.
I think there was a lot of there was some boundaries pushed with the 2024 handbook, but this is going above and beyond in terms of its boundary pushing. So
Yeah.
I actually do think that this has to do with maybe. I'm not saying it's bad. I actually think it's cool. I think the different art styles is cool. I think it's got potential, but it honestly reeks to me of someone who's kind of testing the bounds of what they can do while still doing a good job.
Yeah, it's kind of this point where I'm like, it looks nice and it's good art, but the implications of having these different styles all in one place, like, there is just a little bit of that cynic in me with everything that's happened over at Wizards that's like, is this a good thing to do it like this way? Does this mean something in the future that we won't like? I don't know. I hope not. I hope it's just, we can do some cool different styles. I don't necessarily mind that. But...
Oh, I just noticed the black and white picture, not black and white. It's you notice the eyes have green.
Yes, I heard. I was seeing some of the comments. I was checking those, and someone was saying that, and I didn't notice that before. That was definitely something really cool about it. And they definitely
a little bit of yellow off to the left.
It's very stylized. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's Yeah, no, I think it's really good. It depends on how they fit it together in the book itself. I presume, if I had to guess, because it's supposed to be a few different adventures. So my guess is going to be each adventure is going to have a different art style.
Yeah, and that could work, you know?
No, I'm not saying it can't work. I'm just saying this is very... I just honestly personally think that this is someone who's testing the waters, with their new job.
And I'm also kind of interested to see, for the single-player adventures, if they're just single-player. I would think they would probably be multiplayer with single-player option, but I'm not sure. Because again, we're supposed to have 2 of them in an anthology of adventures. That is a pretty, like, what's supposed to be 10, one for each of the dragons, normal dragons. So that's 20%. That's a pretty good chunk of your book that's devoted to one-on-one play. If it's just that.
I mean...
Curious.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's made for one-on-one play. Yeah, because there are like sidekick rules, so it's probably going to use those. It's basically be like you can use the sidekick. If not, if you have more people, you can negate that.
Yeah, because definitely like solo adventures are really much more meant for. They're built differently, you know, and it's not that they couldn't have both multiplayer and solo versions rules in adventure, but they tend to be built different.
Yeah,
I don't know. We'll see. I'll probably, like, you know, when it finally comes out, I might not have a chance to look at it, but I'll probably, like, you know, maybe check out some people talking about it. We can see what's going on.
We'll see if I buy it. I don't want to buy a ton more D&D books. I'm never going to play them.
That's the thing, is I'm not going to say it's outside the realm of possibility at this point in time.
I've used, like, 2 of these.
Yeah. But I definitely
outside
think
of the core ones, which are over here.
Yeah.
So, like, these ones onwards, I've used only a few.
Like, I still use some, like, actual 5e books, but, like, yeah. But 5.5 definitely is one of that point where I'm like, it will require something special for me to purchase it at this point in time.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, as dumb as it sounds, it's like, I still want to buy some of the older, 5th edition, 2012 5th edition ones, because I still want to run some of those adventures. I'm just very skeptical of 2024.
Yeah, well, some of those 2012 ones, I still have to like reference or like get information with people for some things from those books because like I don't have all of them, so it's sort of like I still do have to
because I
look it
actually
up.
have a lot of them.
Which one am I? There's a few I'm missing, and I can't remember which of them, but they're a few of the non-adventure ones.
Yeah, I have all of the non-adventure ones. I don't have all the adventures.
Yeah, I don't have all the adventures, and I've got maybe like 2/3, 3/4 of all the non-adventure ones. So,
yeah, I mean that's what I have is all the non-adventure ones. So,
let's continue on here though. Let's talk about something we were talking about last week. So, this is something that was very interesting. I was not expecting, and it's the Deadpool secret lair.
I'm actually gonna go to the bathroom.
Okay, it got sold out.
I don't say much about magic anyway.
Yeah, but it is getting a physical release in said stores. So it's like one of those things is like, you don't know how many copies of Secret Lair go to stores. And this is something that they're trying out. So I think that's a good thing, because it's going to provide additional opportunities for people to get it. We've been stuck on, especially with their new system of, we only have so many, when they're gone, you're SOL, ha ha ha. Now granted, it's the non-foil version, but still, nonetheless, this gives people time to check the art, see if they like it, analyze the value, these things like that. That, you need time to do, which this sold out before anybody could really look into things. It sold out quickly, but it was like a sudden drop. So, it will be more opportunities, but unfortunately I think also, like, it'll be more opportunities for, maybe scalpers to get in there. But if they only sell one per person, it might be okay. Also, I'm curious as to how many they're going to send out to the WPN stores. I don't know. It's more versions of it. This is a little bit better. Like, you have the exclusive release where you can also get the foil version online, and then you send some to stores. Certain stores, granted, but certain stores could also sell it to you.
Yeah, that's at least better than nothing.
Yeah, it's an improvement. So, maybe we'll see more of the things like this. This is a thing they were talking about doing, and it was the first time we're seeing them do it, so... I don't know. So, Paizo. We can talk about Paizo for a minute here. With what I wanted to talk about is... Look, I'm not gonna lie. I only wanted to talk about this product because it's called Dawn of Frogs.
Interesting.
It's a name. So, it's Paizo Game Night, Dawn of Frogs. Sorry. Thank you.
I mean, you don't give them ahead of time, so I need you to post them so I can start looking.
I did that before, but didn't have time, but I keep forgetting to do it nowadays. So it's a box set that has 3 short adventures for first level characters in the Dunmire Swamps. It has everything. It's got some pre-generated characters, poster maps, combat sheets, pawns, the things, 32-page adventure books. So it's... I wouldn't call this like a starter, but this harkens back to actually something that used to be done in like AD&D, where they put out like box sets of stuff with little adventures and things.
Well, I mean, I can kind of see why that's not as popular anymore, because as far as I'm aware, even those old box sets didn't have like things like pawns and such. They were just like a box of some like basic stuff.
Yeah, usually it was like a couple example characters or character sheets, and then like 2 or 3 books. I'm not gonna lie, that it has been like in certain times when I'm trying to like look up stuff for things like Ravenloft or Dark Sun, and I have to reference stuff from 2nd edition. It's a bitch because some of those books are in the box sets, So I either have to like see if there's places where people talk about them online, or maybe PDFs or something that exists. I'm gonna be honest. D&D, if you go to the what is it called, the DM's Guild, I think is the thing, the Roll20 or not Roll20, drive-through RPG version for D&D, yeah.
D&D, they have pretty much every book, including box sets.
I'll put it there. their prices are not good for a lot of those.
I mean, they're more expensive than they were originally, but at the same time, there's also just the convenience factor. So.
Yeah, I know. That's the thing, too. I haven't had to be inconvenienced enough to purchase from there, but I have considered it before.
Honestly, that's fair. I purchased a bunch of those books when I went to play the Spelljammer, when I joined the Spelljammer campaign, just so I can read the rules and stuff.
Well, I'm not gonna lie. I actually own all the Spelljammer books. I bought those years and years ago.
That's cool.
I was a big fan of Spelljammer. I tried to get every book. I don't know if I've ever. I probably have at least most of them. There might be like one or two weird books that are a little bit more rare than I'm missing. But I tried my best to get. Big Spelljammer. But anyway, this is it. Look, I mean, again, the name is kind of neat. It's a simple adventure, a couple of adventures for like low-level characters. You know, yes, it's got pre-made characters. Do you have to play with them? No. But certainly speaking, you could probably use this as a good starting place for people with Pathfinder 2nd Edition, or, you know, if you just want to, like, pick up and, like, you know, do a quick adventure with some friends. It's also useful for those, you know.
Yeah, and it sounds like they're designed to be one-shots.
Yeah. So.
Because it says, like, play them on your next 3 game nights. You know,
yep.
So play 3 adventures over 3 game nights. Yeah.
So. A pre-order is August, so...
Yeah.
Alright. Yeah. We can move on to the return of an older game. Dark Conspiracy is returning. So there was an article first in EN World. I'll link that. And then there's also another one about it. So basically, Mongoose Publishing has basically acquired the old Dark Conspiracy, which is from 91, and Designer Games Workshop. GDW I know of by initials, but I can't remember.
Game Design Workshop.
Yeah, I don't remember what else they worked with.
Oh, you know, Traveler is one.
Oh, that makes sense because Mongoose has Traveler now. It all makes sense. I see, like, because I've been associating Traveler with Mongoose now, I forgot they were the original people with it.
Yeah. I forgot what else they did. I know they did some other stuff.
But that makes so much sense now that they've acquired another game that they worked on. Okay.
Yeah.
It's basically like near future dark horror game it's supposed to be. It had 3 editions, with the last one in 2012 and one in 95 in between there. So it has been, you know, 5 ages of time since we got a new edition of it. And honestly speaking, because, you know, I feel like Mongoose is a good company to have it since they're used to working with stuff with Traveler and stuff like that. Yeah. So they picked up the right, and they're planning for release next year for, I guess, the new edition.
Yeah, Games Design Workshop stuff did get scattered a bit. Actually, what's weird is Games Design Workshop is still the only owner of a number of things. So, yeah. Like, the only one that I see that went to someone else is Twilight 2000, which apparently is now owned by Free League Press.
Yeah.
But Space 1889 is also was sold to someone else, but I don't know what they are doing. But yeah, then like other ones such as Dinosaurs, Cadillacs and Dinosaurs seems to still be owned by GDW.
Cadillacs and Dinosaurs. I know, not the role playing.
Dangerous Journeys is also.
I know of that because of watching. You know, no, this is gonna weirdly date. Hanging out in Blaze's basement when we were doing things like Pathfinder, basically a while, like years and years ago at this point in time now, at least over a decade. Occasionally, before we started gaming, we would he would have his laptop down there and put on like some YouTube clips and watching through old cartoon openings, and I would always remember, because it was really weird, Cadillacs and Dinosaurs was one of them. So it might have been another product from other places, but I know it's from the cartoon. At least the opening.
There's some weird... Okay, I'm like now looking through this. Okay, there's some weird connections here. Apparently Twilight 2000, which is currently owned by Free League Press, is actually the precursor
Mongoose
to 20...
has it now. As of October 2024, they have Twilight 2000 and 2300 AD.
They've had that for a while.
And of course they got the Traveler rights from Mark Miller. So I guess they're trying to assemble all of as much as they can of
all
GW
of Traveler
stuff. Yeah.
Well, so here's the thing I found out just now. I didn't know this. Twilight 2000 is the precursor to Traveler 2300, and 2300 is the precursor to Traveler.
Okay.
So they have that whole timeline, because that was all Mark Miller stuff, I think. Dark Conspiracy, though, I think is just something different.
So it's interesting to see, because I do know Free League had done a version of it. So I'm guessing what is happening is, let's see here. Yeah. I'm trying to see the publication stuff. The Free League has put it out, but okay. So Free League had received the license to publish it. So what I'm guessing is they might still have the license to publish it, but ownership has gone to Mongoose.
Got it. Yeah, there's some weird deals and stuff that happen in order to get ownership of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So it sounds like Free League didn't get ownership of it, but just wanted to publish new versions. So that's going to be interesting if that deal expires at some point in time, and then Mongoose is going to take over, or if Mongoose will let them keep doing stuff, maybe with a little bit more of their input. I don't know, because that can't happen at the end of back end of last year. But yeah.
Apparently, there was a Dark Conspiracies 3rd edition released in 2012.
Yeah.
But I don't think it had a lot of fanfare, just because it sounded like reading it. It's like it was supposed to be a group that was supposed to put out in 2010, but then it fell through, so someone else put it out in 2012, and I'm just like, okay, that sounds like it probably wasn't.
So probably your big thing would be like 1st and 2nd editions are really where Dark Conspiracies gained its popularity, and then there was problems putting out the 3rd edition. It did come out, but it didn't really have fanfare that they would like. So now it's sort of finally, this is a proper resurrection. Okay.
Yeah, because the 2nd edition was put out in 1997.
Yeah.
And it sounds like not a lot was done with it.
Yeah.
Because I think there was only 2 books put out for 2nd edition. So 1st edition is the one that has all the stuff.
Yeah. Again, I can recognize that there's these late 80s, early 90s games that had some big popularity back in those days that, just sometimes are hard to get reprints out. So, cool. It's a classic. I'm not against classics coming back. As long as you properly update the rules, these systems, the ideas behind these systems and stuff like that are always fun and in different ways and ideas that are history.
Yeah. Nowadays we have math and can actually figure out how to make certain things work, whereas in the past they just use giant tables of stuff, and it's like, okay, well, how do I look this up? It's like, well, no, now you just have to multiply it by 6, and now you're good. It's like, okay, that's much better than this weird convoluted thing that was just kind of random numbers put together based on what they felt was balanced.
Dark Conspiracy is so weird because it's near apocalyptic, near future, but also supernatural. Because I'm listening to this list of stuff: Eldritch evil that in a long secret prison dimension, aliens, wastelands between megacities, demons, or worse. It's
kind of sounds like that kind of sounds like that game Joe made.
Oh, God,
with aliens and mole people.
Yeah,
in
no,
Chicago.
You're not right. Except he went back in the past and wanted to be wanted to do mobsters, basically, prohibitionary mobsters. Yeah. So that's interesting. Cool. Hopefully they will have some success, and we can see another classic come back in a modern way. There's always some interesting ideas.
Kind of cool. I actually think it'll be really cool to see a new, kind of almost horror base, because it seems almost supposed to be a Lovecraftian type horror.
Yeah, I get the feeling that, like, it's not just Lovecraftian, but that's, like, one of those major elements to it. That's, like, a lot of really horrible things happening in this, like, kind of dark world, and, you know, overcoming people. You know, demonic incursions, alien invasions, eldritch horrors, the works. Anyway,
Yep.
So, I decided to put this one in here as our next one, which is, of course, Baldur's Gate 3. They're getting a patch 8 and a big update. Honestly, because I looked at some of the notes here in this article and some of the archetypes, subclasses they're adding. What's that like? So it's Path of Giants Barbarian, Death Domain Cleric, Circle of Stars Druid, which I love, Oath of the Crown Paladin, Arcane Archer Fighter, Drunken Master...
Now I want to play just to play Arcane Archer Fighter.
Yeah. Drunken Master Monk, Swarmkeeper Ranger, Swashbuckler Rogue, Shadow Magic Sorcerer,
that's also one of the...
Yeah.
Swashbuckler Rogue is also one of my favorites.
Hexblade Warlock, and Bladesinger Wizard. Those are some really... That's a really good collection of subclasses. I'm not going to lie. Seeing that, I'm like, oh, wow. Some of these weren't in there before? I guess not, then. This will also bring crossplay and photo mode. So, I guess now, if you have Baldur's Gate 3 on somewhere else, like if you have on Steam, you can play it with someone else somewhere else. If, like, on a console, or maybe on, like, I don't know if it was, like, if this is just system crossplay, or if it's, like, you know, store crossplay, like, between Epic and Steam. I don't, again, I only have played a little bit of Baldur's Gate 3, which I do have to play through at one point in time now. Maybe now that
I've never finished it. I've played it about 6 times, and I've never finished it.
I always considered playing it individually, just because it's a much better story experience then, before I would do multiplayer. But I played a little bit of multiplayer for, like, Act 1, for most of, a good chunk of Act 1. Not all the way through, but a good chunk of it there, which I remember some of it. I remember parts of the intro and the early parts of the game. There's a lot I forgot. I remember someone had, like imp corpses and just kept throwing them at everybody. And that was their weapon. It was weird. They're just using corpses and throwing them at people. It was hilarious. And apparently.
You're saying like as okay, yeah.
As weapons. They were just using the corpses of imps they picked up from the first area just to throw at people constantly. I gotta go pick up my imps, you know? Anyway. You know, it sounds like a really good thing. It's coming out soon? Looks like this week. Upcoming week. It's supposed to come out. So...
April 15th, so yeah, this week.
Yeah. It also looks like this might be the last big update they're planning.
That doesn't surprise me. I know they've already said they've started working on other stuff, so...
Yeah. So we just finished up a few major things, so... Alright, you know, good time to maybe do another play of Baldur's Gate 3, or check it out together. Because they got a lot more options. Alright. So, Roll 20. Some updates, especially for their Jumpgate beta. They're adding in something which I have no idea how to use in Foundry, but I know it exists. A foreground layer. Which doesn't sound like a lot, but it does add things to the way you're building stuff. Having multiple layers of your maps and stuff like that.
Wow. An actual foreground layer. Man, what are they going to add next? A background layer?
Look, I think they technically have that.
No, that is the base background layer. That is where you put the maps on. No, my more joke is just like you know, like I personally I'm just like I want them just to allow you to add like layers and define them as different things, so that way I can have like 3 GM layers for like different things. You know, and maybe like, you know, two map layers, so that way one of them can be like one where, you know, a foreground map layer, you know, where maybe you have rotating things so you can like go into and rotate them, you know, rather than having to accidentally click on the background, you know, like stuff like that.
Again, I think it's like, as much as we can be kind of like critical or sarcastic, it is a good thing that they're doing stuff like this. This is a sign that they're finally like getting their heads out of their butts and actually like doing some stuff to make their system better.
honestly, I do not envy Roll20 in the situation they're in, because they are basically working with duct tape, super glue, and popsicle sticks, and then trying to turn it into something that's competitive, while also maintaining the features of the things built with those popsicle stickers. It's like it's not easy, because like basically, just to explain what I'm kind of referencing, they have to update everything to more modern stuff and make them easier for people to both modify and play, and make them more powerful, still work on low end systems, still keep it free, while also allowing all the old systems, or all the sheets that were made 20 years ago and haven't been updated since, and still have them work with their current new stuff they're adding. So it's a lot for them to balance.
Yeah.
Like something like Foundry, which was built from the ground up with the idea that it's going to be heavily modified. We know they knew what they wanted. They had a vision when going into it, and it's actually stuck to that. Roll20 has changed a lot since it first started. I mean, that's why Roll20 is releasing these things so far apart, and like Foundry can like release it like a new thing like every 2 year, like every year and a half or something. Yeah.
It's the unfortunate thing of they're building off of stuff that they had better built in a lot of ways,
Yeah, it was just built for completely different off a completely different idea. It was like more like, okay, people can do these simple things. They didn't intend to make it like super complex. They just and then they got super complacent for a long time and didn't update it at all for years because they were the only one. That was the part that bothered me the most.
Yeah,
and now they're playing catch up, but at least they're playing catch up and not just letting themselves disappear.
I think that's
and still remaining free.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that I do commend them for doing is they kind of got rest on their laurels. They were the best one. They were the only one in town, kind of thing like that for quite a long time.
They weren't the only one. They were just the only free one, or the only
They've had
one of the best.
They've had no real direct competition, while a lot of other people kind of build their own things in a lot of different ways. And then now we have those that are very solid. Things like Foundry is just solid. A solid foundation, solid basis. Foundry, from my experience with it, I do like it a lot, but it does have some major issues just for annoyance for my sake, that, just for setting things up, that are, in Roll20, I would have some of these things already. Just granted, it does have some things that aren't in Roll20, too. But it's also, it's that kind of weird place, I like having them, but I didn't necessarily need them also, so it's that kind of weird spot of, I'm glad I'm using Foundry now for what we have, but part of me is still it still overwhelms me a lot with a lot of things that are in there,
Roll20's simplicity does make it easier to set up in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
But Foundry, but honestly, part of me is there's probably a module that will make that same experience in Foundry.
I like simplicity. That's my big favorite thing, because again, it comes down to I like working smarter, not harder. That's always been my attitude in a lot of ways, So, again, Foundry's been fun, but definitely speaking, it's sort of I do kind of still miss a little bit of Roll20. It hasn't completely won me over as an always use it kind of thing.
I mean, to be fair, my motto is you haven't done a good enough job until your hands are bleeding.
You can do that. Good luck to you. I tried doing that years ago, and it wasn't happy, and I got a lot of stress headaches. So I stopped doing stuff like that because it was bad for my health.
To be fair, I actually am not that bad. My real motto is basically basically put as much work into it as you can in the time frame you have.
That's always good.
So I usually try and make it as upskill as possible, but if I don't have the time, I just know that it's not going to come through. So. For up to me, I'd make all my own assets, have everything set up, with pixel art maps that I made with all my own custom assets, in a system that I programmed to be exactly as I want it to be.
Yeah. So again, like, I think the major thing about, like, having a foreground layer is, like, certainly speaking, you can do things like, you can have characters go below trees and stuff like that, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, that's what a foreground layer is. Yeah. Or you can have a roof that fades out if you
have people enter into it.
Yeah.
So it's got some cool ideas and can add some, it adds to it. And, again, that's what we talk about, having more layers is good that way.
Yeah.
So, it's a good update. I'm glad. I want to see more of this. I want to see them be competitive with the rest of the people. I know it's going to be a long thing because they have their spaghetti net code of problems that they got to work off of.
Yeah, it's just their legacy code. Yeah.
Good luck to them. I root for them to have some success.
Same. No, I actually do admire them. I like it. It sucks that they set out their laurels for a while, but otherwise they've honestly done a pretty good job and they've stuck to their guns about maintaining free and accessible stuff.
Yeah. So, alright. Let's pop on to just a bit Shadowrun, because I'm a big fan of Shadowrun, and I thought this was also kind of appropriate, because it's another box set. We're getting a, I guess, starter box for Shadowrun 6th edition, which, okay, I'm gonna say this here. Why didn't we have this up till now? 6th edition has been out for quite a while. If you're gonna come up with a starter, you really want to get it out around the time of the thing, at least within a year of it. Let me actually look at when Shadowrun 6th edition came out.
That's what I'm looking at right now, too.
When did you release Shadowrun 6th edition? You were released
2019.
Damn!
It's been 6 years since they released Shadowrun 6th edition.
Okay. Granted, it did feel like there was a couple of years there that Catalyst wasn't putting out a lot. And we're getting, already, like, this last, half year, there have been a lot of releases. And that's the other book I linked there, which I may have mentioned in a previous one, but it's there. The combat book is coming out now. I may have mentioned that one. I don't remember exactly. Again, because they're coming out with a bunch of stuff now, and it's been a while, I'm not remembering it. But again, yeah, beginner's box. I'm glad those are good. Having, early rules, sample characters, event and adventure, things like that. Stuff put in. They've got gear cards, a poster. I think this also thing is, starter boxes can't be like they used to be, as we were kind of talking about. Like, when we talked about the Paizo one, which is, it's not really a starter box, it kind of used this one. The Frogs one. But it has a lot of stuff in it that makes it worthwhile. It's got the little pawns, it's got the sheets, it's got all these things that makes it kind of fancier than just it's like I guess they got gear cards, which is I guess a way of providing game stats at your fingertips. It's kind of a weird thing to do, like the card version of gear that you hand out, I guess.
I've always kind of liked card stuff, although I do agree it's a little weird to do it for gear as your main thing. I always like cards as conditions and stuff, because that's always been the conditions and stuff, because that always felt like you could use if you're actually at a table, be like, okay, I have this condition, I have this condition. You can have them in front of you so you remember.
For me, the time I really liked cards was 4th edition. Because I could, have the cards, and I could flip over powers, because you have a certain number of powers you can use encounter, daily, stuff like that. So you could flip them over if you use them and kind of keep track of whatever you've used. A lot better. That system kind of needed cards a little bit. But I mean, you can also, get a drop thing. You can also mark that off. Cough, cough. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
But, yeah, no. Again, I'm glad they're doing a lot of stuff now. I think I would want to,
cool cover.
Yeah, they've got some great art on for Shadow. I still might do 5th edition next time I do it, but if they keep doing stuff like this, I kind of feel like I might want to see if all these extra new books have been adding those layers to 6th edition that I feel like they peeled off too many of when we went to 6th edition.
Yeah.
I think I've talked about that, how when I read through the 6th edition rules, I felt they were all, too peeled off, too much, to make it simple. They overcompensated for the unfortunate difficulty that Shadowrun has always had in complexity. Where I thought it was a fine line. So maybe we'll go that direction.
I mean, that's
Maybe.
what I like. That's what I like. What Mongoose did with Traveler, whereas they peeled off a lot of those layers, but then they literally just added them back in separate books. But they made it clear they were going to do that from the beginning, as far as I'm aware.
Yeah, it's kind of. I think in that case, it's sort of like we're making the base be simple enough, and then we're adding back in those things. And also, it comes down to you can add whatever layers you want at that point.
Yep.
You don't need to use those layers. We can add those layers back in to get back to that complexity. And maybe that's what they're doing now. I don't know. I'm
I
it's an
mean,
advanced combat
that sounds like it. That sounds like it was a lot to plan 6 years in advance.
I get the feeling that maybe they're doing it now because maybe that's what the fans kind of want. I do feel like not that
Reactionary, yes, that makes more sense.
Yeah. I feel like there are probably people that are a fan of 6th edition. You know, I don't think 6th as changes between editions. I don't think 6th edition was so bad personally, but I just wasn't a fan of it, and that's why I stuck with like 5th and 4th. So,
yeah.
So, it's something to keep an eye on. Again, beginner's box, the starter's box, beginner's box. If you want to check that out, you can get a sense of it. Shadowrun 6th edition is not bad overall. It's not my cup of tea. Maybe it's a good place for you to at least get introduced to the world. If you want to do some of the more complex systems, those dive back into older ones like 5th edition, 4th edition, who are basically the same as each other, but 5th is a little easier for configuration, so that might be the one to suggest. Or maybe get some of these more books that are coming out now that are adding layers to it. So,
I think the weirdest part of Shadowrun is how they like region locked certain things.
This is one of those ones that I did not realize until like 6 years ago they did that. When I discovered like, wait, there's all these.
I didn't realize it till like last year when you told me about it.
Yeah, no, it was one of those things. Is because I started again. This is for me getting into doing the channel here and stuff like that. When I started doing stuff and thinking of things, learning that there were books that were like came out in different like Europe and regions and different languages that are just there, and it's just like it was so weird. But I don't know if that's Catalyst or that was TSR. I think that I don't know. Could be Catalyst too. I don't know. I'd have to check as to what edition they are. Those books are. I don't remember off the top of my head. Let's keep going though, because we can talk about Tabletop Tycoon. Which I haven't talked about a lot, but they are very nice folks, and they have a lot of smaller groups under them, I believe, because I know the people that did Everdell is part under the umbrella of Tabletop Tycoon. I don't know if they're like a how to describe the group for them. Or it's Tabletop Tycoon that does Everdell, or they under someone else. They might be published with someone else. I can remember how they're built here. Oh, yeah. Okay. They're publishers. So Tabletop Tycoon is a publisher. Great, now I understand it more. So they publish games from Starling Games, Victory Point Games, Sparkworks, Flying Meeple, and I guess some things of their own, too. Alright, now I've had to remember the way that they were built up. Anyway, they have acquired a game for their line, which is the Trailblazer line of games, which I'm 99% sure many years ago we talked about one of these, I thought. These, like, board games based around, like, natural trails and natural wonders and going to places. Or at least we talked about something similar to this. So it's interesting that they're expanding their game.
Apparently just searching Trailblazers games gets you the sports team.
Mariposa Games is the company.
Yeah, I was just trying to look at how the game itself works.
Okay, Trailblazer board game.
Yeah, so it seems that you're supposed to from an immediate glance, okay. The different trails, the different animals, and you have to like make them go where you want to. Yeah, I see. Okay, so like basically there are tiles, and your goal is to get the, based on what you draw, to get the animals to the right places. I don't know how this is like competitive. Like, I mean, it's obviously competitive, but it's like seems to be like goals where it's like you pass through a mountain to get to something. I don't know.
Okay. All right.
Or maybe the animals might. Okay, sorry. I think the animals are hazards, and then you have your people who are trying to get to a place. And so, but the animals pass along certain areas. Anyway, sorry, this is me just gathering from just looking at a bunch of images.
Okay, so also looking at Tabletop Tycoon, they have some smaller companies that work with them, and they also have some publishing imprints. Looks like, which publishing imprints would be like sub brands or subgroups that do certain things, you know, which is kind of a different, like a sub company, kind of not. Again, it's weird because like Starling Games is a publishing imprint, but Victory Point Games is semi-independent because it's just working with them as a publisher. So, yeah.
Okay. I just
to understand the situation of the company because it always confused me a little bit, and I want to try to explain it properly. You know, I always assumed they were all umbrellaed under Tabletop Tycoon, these company names, but it does seem like some of them are just more publishing partners that are like really small independent groups that are even smaller than them. Others are subgroups to them. Depends on each one. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
I've said that now. So yeah.
So the idea is there are different cards with different types of tracks. There's bikes, hiking, and kayaking. And so you need to, and basically you get almost like cards. It's kind of like a Ticket to Ride. How you have like cards where you need to make routes. So it's like you need to make a route of a certain type with a certain shape or something like that, or you know, do a certain thing, cross a certain place or whatever. Anyway, so you have like a goal, and then so you're trying to achieve those goals while other people are trying to achieve their goals, but you all share these tiles. So, and then the tiles have either rivers, hiking trails, or bike trails, and then you have to, then you have to like, and they can cross each other or turn, and you have to like, and based on what someone else plays down, it can ruin what you're about to place down, you know?
Yeah. So, like, they've acquired the line now, so I guess they're I assume when you say acquired, they're the owner-publisher now of it, taking from Mariposa. I don't know if Mariposa is just independent now, or if they've sold it to them. I don't know the exact thing, but they were going to be putting out a Colorado Trail in 2026, so I assume now it's going to be published under Tabletop Tycoon in 2026. So, the next the next one in the series will still be coming. Cool.
Actually, wait. This might be a different game I was looking at.
Trailblazers, Trailblazers.
The main reason is because what I was looking at was called Trailblazers with an S, and this is Trailblazer. I was looking at a completely different game, I think. Now I'm looking at this. This is a different thing.
Here we go. I'll read the description here on the
this is a very different board game.
Embark on a journey of exploration and discovery along the historic John Muir Trail through the High Sierra, California. Explore the majestic mountains and lush picturesque. Blah blah blah. Takes place over a course of 12 days. Rounds of hiking, backpacking along the trail. You'll experience daily trail encounters. Choose exploration destinations along the trail. Acquire manage natural and personal resources. Discover and observe sites of your environment. It looks. Oh yeah, and this is like
this is very different.
It
looks
so
funny when there's like literally an S Trailblazer versus Trailblazers.
Yes. This looks to
are
be
two
like
completely different games.
This looks to be a combination of resource gathering and maybe something like Tokaido, where you're supposed to gain like points by like visiting places along a trail.
Yeah.
Which is the Kyoto tour Japan one that I think we talked about a few weeks ago. Which I do like that one, Tokaido. But yep. I guess it's got a little bit of that like probably visiting certain places gets you like, I guess, victory points and stuff like that, but you do have to manage yourself, you know, and like your resources and things like that. So it's interesting.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just like, oh my gosh, that was just such a weird little mistake to make, and I'm just like,
it's fine. That happens.
What happened? What made me question it was I went back to the article and realized how different the box covers looked. And I'm like, wait a second. I don't look closely enough at the first box cover. Anyway.
So, we will briefly stop on this one, but I thought it was important to talk about because it is something that's probably on many people's minds, and that is tariffs, especially here in the U.S. Well, there's an article here which is very important to see, and that is basically we don't know how that's going to when things are finalized, when things end up. We don't know how it's going to affect physical board games. Here's the
Or are you
link.
just talking about it? Okay.
Yeah. You know, here. This is an article here. But we do know that not included in these tariffs are printed books, brochures, leaflets, and similar printed matter other than single sheets. So, RPG books that are made overseas are not going to be affected by any extra things coming up now. So they are unaffected at very least. So if you're doing RPG books, you don't have to worry. But if you're doing a board game with physical components, I don't know. I don't know how it's going to affect you. We don't know yet. Okay? So it's a weird place for the... And also, I don't know about, cards that are made. You know, Magic cards, Pokemon cards, things like that. I don't know how they count in all this. You know, there's portions of this industry we don't know about.
And there's also the aspect of, something like a Kickstarter where it's you're shipping directly to a customer. Yeah. You know, is that going to be affected?
I can't say for sure.
I don't think those are affected, because those are, I think, handled differently, shipped packages. So if you buy an individual item from outside and then have it shipped to you, I think that's different.
But usually then, the person that's going to be sending them out from the Kickstarter gets them in bulk from a company. Are they getting it locally, or are they sending for that overseas? Yeah. There are many questions still in place about this entire thing, unfortunately. But at very least, I can say that we know RPG books are exempt, at least from the basic rules that have been put down. You know, we'll see how everything else goes. So, if you're the independent RPG publisher, or somebody like Wizards or Chaosium with big books and stuff like that, at least you don't have to worry about that. But those boxes, I don't know how they're qualified. Damn, they have books in them. I have so many questions that we're not going to have answers to for quite a while.
I mean, I'm going to tell you right now, just from what I understand about, being someone whose business is actually somewhat affected by this. Also, when it comes to clarifications about what products are, it is insane how certain things are clarified. In fact, there's certain lobbying things I've heard of that basically change what something is counted under to basically change what tariff it falls in. I've heard of that kind of thing before.
Okay, so basically there are sometimes things that are in between two spots, and so you will lobby for it to count as one thing rather than the other.
Yeah, yeah. For example, the stuff we sell we sell urea, which is primarily used as a fertilizer, but can also be used as an industrial emissions reduction systems. That's what we actually mostly sell it for, is emissions reductions. But it's classified under fertilizer.
Weird.
So it's that's kind of the thing where it's all things can be used for different things, you know?
Yeah.
I mean,
again,
so
I think we're in a developing situation that's a little bit of a mess. So those of us here in the tabletop industry, we're related to the tabletop industry. We're keeping an eye out. We're all doing our best. So,
yeah.
Keep it in mind.
Isolationism is crashing our economy. It's fine.
Let's talk about something that's not isolationism. Let's talk about Tomb Raider. So I've got this link here. We're going to be getting a Tomb Raider board game. I'm not going to lie. There's another one of those properties. As soon as someone says Tomb Raider board game, I'm like, yeah, I can see that. That you're
totally works. That's definitely a way to do this.
Going to explore a place, grab some stuff, fight some creatures, that kind of thing. So again, I'm not... I guess, because... Are you just playing Lara? Oh, it's set to be a single-player narrative campaign. Interesting. A single-player game for Tomb Raider? I'm curious. There's a Kickstarter link here. Okay, cool. I'll give it a second. It hasn't gone live.
No, it's just the link. And it's in the article. But,
okay, it does say 1+ players. So I'm guessing it's built that you can just be a single-player experience, but there's probably rules for, playing with other people.
If I had a guess, just based on the image and other stuff that I'm like skimming through, it's probably gonna have some similar concepts to something like Wrath of a Shardalon and those kind of Great Castle Ravenloft board games, where it's gonna be like there are rules for how things work, and you follow them regardless of how many people you're playing with.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. And there might be rules for, like, adding extra challenges or stuff for extra players and stuff like that, too.
Yeah.
I am curious as to, like... Because it does say, like, 1+. I'm curious as to the plus. Because, again, it's an interesting again, I feel like it does work thematically to be a single-player game with Tomb Raider. It is a single-player video game, for sure. But I'm also curious as to, like, where the storyline will be. If this is based on, like, the reboot Tomb Raider, they could probably do, like... Because I played through the original, the first of the latest reboot series. I didn't play through the other two. And they had some side characters that I assume you could probably, like, play as. Laura's, buddies. I don't remember what the hell they did, or if they were useful at all. But they could pretend to be. That's interesting. I like the idea of it. I think it's cool that we're getting this here. So. Yeah. So you are Crypt of the Chronos is what it's called. And if you're interested in it, you can keep an eye on the Kickstarter. I will link both the article that chat's about here and the Kickstarter here. I will throw that one out. It's the wait page, but it does have some information there. And yes, it's coming soon.
Yeah, it doesn't specify like what happens with multiple people, but
I assume probably because its primary focus is that single player experience, which isn't necessarily bad for a board game, but I always do. It takes me a lot to buy a single player board game just for that. That's why, like, I think it having a multiplayer option is good, because that way, honestly, it was probably more. Sort of like. I like the Arkham Horror games. You can play them single player. I've never played one of them single player.
So now I'm wondering, like, if you have like a physical board game set up and you have like a table and stuff, would it be interesting to stream playing a single player board game? That'd be a very unique stream idea.
You're a good setup for it, maybe. Maybe that would be an interesting way of doing it. Show off the game too. That's not... Again, people do a lot of stuff like that. Adjacent to these things. Card openings, deck building, kind of stuff like that for card games. Miniatures painting. So, definitely speaking, it's not outside the realm of possible. That would be interesting. Alright. So, our last of the main topics today is Superfight 2E! I like this. I like Superfight. I've played before. So, it's basically 2 players deal 2 characters and 2 tribute cards to fight to a fighter. And then you basically argue, kind of, between the 2 of you, which of your fighters would win, and the rest of the players vote to see who would win.
Okay.
So, yeah. It's supposed to be 3 to 20 players. So, yeah, it's supposed to be a lot of players. Odd number of players is usually a little better, because then you can have that, tiebreakers for this. But it's an interesting idea that, like, you play some kind of, like, character, play the power for it, and you sort of like, you could play like, I don't know, I'm just trying to think of something, George Washington, except he's a cyborg, versus, like, Shaquille O'Neal, except he can fly, something like that. And so then you have to argue as to why your character would why cyborg George Washington would beat flying Shaquille O'Neal. And then people vote on it. I found it a fun little game. I feel like it's in the vein of things like Cards Against Humanity, but it doesn't usually go the direction Cards Against Humanity goes, which is why I liked it better. Cards can go very lewd very quick, and very crude very quick.
Well, it's because they have a lot of lewd cards.
I know.
It's very interesting playing Cards Against Humanity with my family. Anyway.
Yes. Yes. So there's new mechanics around a custom D12. I mean, I'm interested in what that new mechanics would be. Updated cards.
Actually, funny little anecdote. Yeah, we were playing that, and we basically had the agreement, like, if we found a dirty card, we could just put it down and draw a new one. I dyslexiated a card. I thought it said human meat. Or, no, sorry. I misunderstood a card. It said man meat, and I thought it meant human meat. Just because, I didn't process it. And I'm like, Everyone else understood when I played it, and I'm just like, oh, okay.
Yes. Gotcha.
I shouldn't say it wasn't quite a dyslexia thing. It was just my brain not processing the other innuendo of it. I thought it was just man. Anyway, that was just a fun little anecdote about Cards Against Humanity that I had one time.
Yeah.
They all ignored it, and I'm just all like, why wasn't that one funny? And like, you know what that means, right? I'm like, what? And I'm like, oh, I didn't think of it in that way for some reason.
Look, I understand that, because sometimes you just it doesn't take a lot for you to miss an innuendo or suggestion and be like, it just flies over your head.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just one of those things where it's just like, I mean, and even if you get it on another day, it's just that day, for whatever reason, my brain didn't process it properly.
Yeah. So, I always had a fun time with Superfight. I'm glad it's getting the second edition. I don't know how long it's been. It's probably been out for a while, first edition. So, updates are always good for games like this and stuff like that, too. So, thumbs up.
All I can think of, though, is Super Fight.
Oh, super hot? You're thinking super hot?
Yeah.
Super Fight? Yeah.
I know. I know it's super hot, but that's where my brain keeps going every time I hear Super Fight.
You said that, and I'm like, I know exactly what you're thinking there. I haven't played Super Hot, but I've watched some playthroughs of it, and you can just see the
played a little bit of it.
The super hot, you know. Well, shall we talk about our week's topic? Which is a follow-up from last week, I thought, for a deeper discussion topic. Because we talked about session organization, I wanted to talk about campaign organization this week. Which a campaign could doesn't necessarily mean giant, epic campaign. I think we talked about this before. It could just mean, I'm going to have 4 sessions. And there are things you have to do between sessions! And between the entire game, you know? I guess things are, questions that you have to ask.
I'm bad at this. If you have any recommendations, let me know.
Let's start with some basics that are things that you want when you're building a multi-session game. Because again, when you're talking about a session, usually that could be one shot too. You can kind of use those same rules we kind of put through. But for a big game that you're going to be over multiple sessions, you have to be like, what's the overall setting? How many places are they going to? Do you plan for them to visit? Or things like that, because that can also determine the map and stuff like that. Or even if you're not using a physical map, to be a little bit more adaptive. You're setting things up that, maybe my team wanders over there. Maybe they find the cave, they need to go over there or something like that. Stuff like that. Also, what is either your villain or boss of the game? Because again, the boss doesn't necessarily need to be the main villain of the game. It could be, our goal is to reclaim this artifact, and we just have to fight this monster that's guarded. That's boss. It's not trying to do anything super evil. You still have to deal with it. But you do have to kind of determine what the overall challenge enemy is, if it's a physical enemy, or equivalent to that. Probably any main NPCs that they'll be interacting with more than once. You have to kind of determine time frame. Again, these are questions that you kind of hit up a lot of times in a session, but you have to ask them on a bigger scale and kind of have to come up with some things. And the thing about a campaign, though, which I think is very important in talking about this, is you got to be flexible.
Yeah.
Because
there.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, I'll let you finish because
I was just gonna say, because you have to be ready to adapt to things your players do. Basically.
Yeah. Because my whole thing... So I've heard a few options, and I feel like none of them have worked for me. My best, and the way I do it best, is to kind of just go with the flow and run on the fly, and basically just play in session to session, and figure out where it goes after each session, and kind of figure out the next steps. Now, I did successfully plan one, which was Bastion Frontier, I would consider successfully planned. I did have issue with one section, which I ended up just skipping, and it was fine. And it was basically just I kind of broke it up into acts. And I was just like, okay, the players will discover that once they discover this, will be, this will be done. Once they discover this part will be done. Yeah. And I had certain things start to happen based on those. I've heard other things. I have a friend who really likes to build a null timeline. That hasn't worked super well for me in the past. And what do I mean by null timeline? A null timeline is what happens if the players do nothing. If the players never showed up. That's a null timeline. Like N-U-L-L. Null.
Oh boy. I mean, like, I'm not gonna lie. I can think of what that would be, but I don't necessarily know if I would build that. Because the thing is, like, at least, I'll take an example, the Fall of Atmosphere, which I just started. I have an idea about what's supposed to happen. But, like, building a null timeline is kind of hard because it's not so cut and dry in a lot of ways with, like, the way I was building my ideas of the story. I made a bunch of chapters. I have some ideas of what each of the chapters is going to be. I haven't really done a lot for chapter 2, but, like, I'm not gonna lie, probably about, like, 25% of this session was, like, basically planned by me. I'm not gonna lie about it. I knew I knew the condition of the village. I knew there was the underground, and I knew there was that guy there. That's pretty much all I've set up there. The guy and his family, and after that, all that investigation stuff there, I just winged that.
Now, I will say the reason I think my friend likes to do this is because he likes to build the game and then run it for like 3 different groups at the same time.
Yeah.
So knowing what will happen, like this person is going to do this on this day, this on this day, this on this day.
Yeah.
And he also likes games that take place over days rather than games that take place so it's a style thing. And I think that's what's hard about designing a campaign is it really depends on your style. Like my style is really great for when I run a sandbox game, which is honestly one of my favorite types of games to run. They just, obviously have no set ending, which is why I don't run them very often. I've really only run one sandbox game, but I really like playing it. It was fun. Even though I didn't like the system, it was Stars Without Number.
Yeah. I think the style, I like 2 different styles. Like, I don't mind I run off of pre-made adventure and kind of make it my own style. That's usually, like, I like that, and it's a lot easier in a lot of ways, but it also can kind of be more annoying in kind of ways, where I do, in a lot of ways, prefer the style I'm doing now, which is, I come up with a basic outline, I put some NPCs in a world, I have an idea about what's going on, but then I allow players to build the story. You guys didn't have to go check out the mayor's place and investigate it and then do a lot of stuff there. Found some clues there, they were fine, but basically it's sort of like, you could have just settled into the inn and gone to dinner.
Yeah.
You really could have done that. You added a whole layer of stuff on, which I really enjoyed, and does add to stuff because you're discovering things maybe in a different order, learning about things. Like, there are tunnels that are under the village. That's an interesting kind of, like, part of the puzzle. You know that now. What does it mean in the puzzle? You don't know yet. Yep. Are they there for, are they like a newer thing? Are they a thing that's been there for a long time? You don't know.
Yeah. I also want to add to the null timeline thing. Null timeline works really great for a campaign that's going to happen over only a couple of days, where what the people are going to be doing at what time, and yes, the players can change that. But if if someone's going to come in and try and rob a bank, and whether or not your players are there, the bank gets robbed.
Yeah.
Or if your players aren't there, the bank gets robbed. So it's like. And you can kind of understand if I understand the point of it. It's just a lot of work, and it's very hard for me to brace that out.
I think the thing is, I don't do a lot of stories like that, so that's definitely one of the ones that's maybe not outside me possibly doing, but like, yeah, I see the use of it, you know, I do.
I'm just saying, actually, this is another thing I'm going to say. When it comes to designing campaign, it's really hard because I wish there were more examples of how people do it, because it's really just a personal thing. And I have not seen enough well laid out ideas on this. And in the end, even the ones I have, I've tried and I haven't liked most of them. So it's just kind of like this thing where it's like I'm kind of trying to develop my own right now.
Yeah. Finding a proper style to develop a campaign can be very difficult, and like, I think it is also very personal a lot of times too.
Yep.
Like, you, in your style of building it, it could work for you and not work for someone else. Like, certainly speaking, I tried to make a campaign based off the ideas of a Pathfinder adventure path before. It didn't really go well. Because, like, an adventure path is built in a certain way. And me trying to mimic that way for my campaign just didn't end up very well. Like, you know, it's that style did not match my style very well. I tried to make it work and it just didn't, unfortunately. And I think that's, you know, happened.
And that's actually one of the really hard things about designing a game. Because if you want an example, where do you look? Modules. Yeah. Guess what's really bad at actually telling you how to design a game? A module. Because modules are designed for everybody.
Yeah.
And that's the problem with them. They're designed in a very different way than a normal campaign. A module is designed so that way the GM has everything they need to work with. It's very comprehensive, and to actually do that for every game you run, you're basically doing 3 times the work than what your players are going to use.
Yeah. You're putting together, you know, a module puts together everything that you theoretically could need and gives you ideas about where you could build off of this stuff. You know, it provides a good outline for everything for running the entire thing. The thing that it breaks down is it is not personalized, it's very generic, and that's why when you talk about, oh, I'm running this, you adapt it. No matter what, you are going to adapt it. Even if you play it fairly letter by letter, it will still slightly be different the time you play it behind someone else plays it. And I think that's where, you know, you're beginning to personalize it. And you have to understand, when you build an individual campaign, it is completely personalized to you. You are not working.
You came to my side on this.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I've said that before though, where it's like you really need to. I actually feel like every module should be personalized to the group you're playing for. Your group you're.
Oh yeah, no. Because again, like, it depending on the group, it might not need a lot of work. You know, it might be as much as like, you know, as much as, like, you know, I've made fun of with Momo, Carrying Crown, that adventure path. At very least, the first adventure is pretty good in a lot of ways. And it does establish a thing that starts out very personal that can give you an opportunity to build off of. You know, it's, oh, you're here for everybody who's connected to this guy's funeral. Oh, in his will, he asks you just, like, you know, spend a few months watching after my daughter to make sure he's all right. You can build a personal relationship with that daughter, and that character of the daughter can be affecting you very much ways. And it's an opportunity for something there. Is there a lot of that in a lot of the adventures after that? No, not really. There's some here and there. But like this is an example of when it's being good and very easily adaptable in the adventure, and that doesn't always happen in campaigns because, you know, establishing stuff is a lot different than things. While you running your game, whether or not you're, like, if you're just making your own, you can set that stuff up to your players because your players are, you know, you're not worried about the generic stuff, you know, unless you are writing a campaign of your own to publish, you don't have to worry about that. And maybe just run it first, write it after. That's also the other thing too. Like, I think that's what I was doing. I was writing it as if it was an adventure path, like the information I wrote down, and it hurt me a lot. So maybe, like, just running the game, and then if you want to do, like, a adaptation version of it and publish it, work on that later. You know?
Actually, yes. I've actually heard if you're going to adapt an adventure that you ran, you definitely want to do it, like, you know, afterwards.
Yep.
But, yeah. as far as like ways to design a campaign, there are some other things I've heard. For example, there is I know How to Be a Great GM had a book that went over, or was this a video? I think I mixed two of those things. I tried. I didn't like it as much. Anyway, but he had 4 phases of like the main adventure, which is getting stuff, building stuff, testing stuff, and realizing goal. This is what your enemy's doing. And this is where the idea of an old timeline actually kind of I've seen before. You know, when my friend said it, I'm like, okay, I can kind of see where you're coming with this. Is a lot of people I've read say focus on what the enemy's doing or the antagonist is doing, not what the players are doing. And so that's definitely some good advice. But yeah, so it's like basically, but it's basically a way to break down like the enemy has to get the things to do the thing, and then it has to build like put that together, whether that's like a ritual or a weapon of mass destruction, or even just a social a social gathering. And then they test, which is like making sure that they can get what they want, and then realizing goal.
Yeah.
But it's so that's yeah. So as I was saying, that's just basically what.
I think it's also important to kind of like, and this can go down to the session level. You have to understand why everything is happening in whatever world you're at. Why you have it. Why is this NPC doing that? What is he doing? Do you have to answer every question about that? No. You have to answer that question enough to know when he interacts with your players, he or she interacts with players, they can interact in a way that the players understand this person's motivation, or what they're doing, or how they will react with them, depending, people, generally speaking, when you interact with someone, you kind of know what's going on between the two of you, and you want that to be expressed in these characters in a lot of ways,
So, while I don't use this directly, the How to Be a Great GM, I do really like one thing he did, because it honestly I think is one of the best things he's ever done, and he says this all the time, but it's someone wants something badly and is having trouble getting it because, and basically that's what you want to do. Like, the Lich is having trouble getting the Orb of All Seeing because it's in a temple guarded by angels. And that's how you need to develop their goals for your villains. That's probably the most important part, is if your villains have a goal, then that will dictate their actions, and then they become people who then can change based on what the players do. I consider that probably the most important part. And however you do that, like How to Be a Great GM had a very simple way of doing that. I have other thoughts on how to set up goals, but
or like if you give an example, if you give an example of something like, let's say you have the bandits. These bandits, they're working for that Lich. Why are they working for that Lich? What do they get out of it? Things like that. You ask these questions because it does form a general idea of why people are there, why they're doing things there. It's the same reason that you don't just put a monster in a closet, call it a day. As much as you can do that in a adventure or exploring or like, a place, it gets weird, sometimes. Like, again, for something like Fall of Abbotsford, when I had the wargs fight you, I could have just been that wargs are in that area. I specifically said they weren't to you because it was supposed to be something then. But I could have just had them be, because they're kind of beasts, they're just natural this area, But there are other things that would be weirder that don't make sense. Like, there definitely could be things that you can stretch and have things that are strange and interesting ideas, but when you do them, it can go pretty far. Like, there's a monster in the secret passage. Why is it there? What does it do to survive there? Questions like that, there are things that you can and should kind of ask to try to get like an idea of where to build things to yourself. And this can, and the thing is, why I think we are talking about these in the retrospect of the entire campaign rather than just a session. Because most of the time you will encounter these in a session. It is usually because, depending on your players, depends on when they encounter some of these things. And you do want to kind of plan ahead. You know, if I'm planning for them to encounter bandits here, you know, who are the bandits taking orders from? You know, are they taking orders from someone? You know, you kind of have to kind of ask these questions to build up this entire thing. Are they just some bandits that are there that are meant to be a kind of slight challenge to your players? Because, again, you can just have kind of random encounters. That's not terrible. You know, if you're like, we need some combat this session. Some bandits attack you, you know. Most role-playing games are, in a lot of ways, a combat game. Usually physical, not always, but they usually have some kind of combat type thing. You know, sometimes social, sometimes otherwise. So, usually you want some kind of challenge to hit your players more than just talking the entire time. Unless it is like, you know, major lore dump, talky kind of sessions. Those do happen. But yeah. Like, I would say, like, because again, very fresh in my mind, Wednesday was the investigation where you're doing ended up being a lot of the challenge to people, you know, like, you're going on, checking all these things out, looking into all these things, and there's like that's the thing that's happening, and that is a skill challenge rather than a physical fight a monster challenge, but it becomes a challenge to you, and you want those challenges to be for your players, you want them to be spaced out, so you're not overwhelming your players. And that's another thing, too, is like figuring out where to add challenge to your players in the course of the sessions you're running. So it's like you're asking a lot of these questions to yourself, and then organizing them what feels natural to you.
Yeah, I think the most important thing is to have, you know, and this is to develop an overarching plot. And that's, I think, I never had a problem developing the overarching plot. But I still think it's important to discuss. And most people, honestly, most people don't. Well, that depends. Some people people are very different. I just actually shouldn't assume that.
I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna guess you guys can guess what's going to happen in the overarching plot of my game.
Oh man, I think some city is going to fall, probably.
It just so happens the name is of the capital of the name in the name of the adventure I'm running. That's kind of weird. It's almost as if there's this horrible army firing down that might be heading for it. Man! Yeah. Again, yeah. Sometimes that like, you know, overarching plot is obvious, sometimes it's not. It doesn't need to be to your players, but it should be to you. You know, I think it's definitely good.
I think, though, when it comes to fleshing it out, there are some other important things. Mm-hmm. I still think it's important to consider, you know, normal writing structures. I've been looking into that a lot lately. There are a dozen of them. And, like, I'm not exaggerating when I say that. I think there are actually, like, 12 or 13. But, you know, you've got, like, the 5-act structure, the hero's journey, those kind of things. No, breaking it down in a way like that is very helpful. I actually consider that more of a way of breaking it down, and it helps keep the story flowing, you know. In fact, like, a way to think about it is that, like, you have your overarching plot, and then it has one, and then, like, your first section also has one, and then your second section also has one. I've actually heard, like, a roller coaster, like, going up and down is a good way to handle it. Getting higher and higher until it finally goes all the way down. I guess an inverse roller coaster then, because you go up and then down. But yeah, so it's important. Another thing I've heard, but again, that comes more to how you break down the campaign, not how you develop the campaign itself. But yeah, and organizing the campaign is a whole thing, and that's where I have trouble. I can create campaigns. Organizing them,
yeah. There's a lot of personal things too when it comes to building the overarching story and campaign to an adventure. And I think it's that one thing of you can see examples in places, but I definitely think my advice in this entire conversation would be, sure, you can read big overarching adventures, adventure paths, things like that, that can give you ideas of larger adventures. From like D&D, Curse of Strahd, from Shadowrun, there's the Artifact series I like to do. I enjoyed. From Pathfinder, any of their adventure paths. Other games have longer campaigns they built together in either one books or multiple books and things like that. The thing about all those is they provide you basic information for what kind of information might be important to your campaign and ideas about that, sparking you in a way to build. It still comes down to you and the style that you like building. Do not try to repeat what is in these places. You can use it as a, kind of like I say, like, you can find inspiration anywhere. Use it as inspiration. Get you some ideas about, like, oh, hey, I maybe want to mention this kind of thing, maybe I want to at least have an idea what's going on at the store, at the local, general store. My players might go there, or the weapon shop, or the place that they might be selling, special items, or, kind of things like that. Knowing, who's in charge around here. These things are provided by a lot of these books and sources and stuff like that, and it gives you that idea of, these are the kind of things that maybe I want to have for my players. But again, you also then have, it's you know what things that are good things to have, then you come down to that question of whether or not you need it for your game. Do I need that store? Oh, that would probably be helpful. I should at least come up with an idea for it. Even if you don't design everything, having an idea of what they sell, maybe the name of the person in charge of it, that's the thing, you set that up. So that might be a place where players are visiting multiple times. Name of the city, name of that, it's your using these examples because there really isn't a good way. Again, that's why I think examples of campaigns are still useful, even though they're not perfect.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not saying don't find examples for stuff. I'm saying don't try and copy what a module does. Exactly.
Yeah, it's the don't try to copy it. You can use it as an example though for giving you an idea where to go.
Yeah. And here we go. Here's kind of the thing I was thinking of. I finally found some images where it's it builds. And you can kind of think of what happens at each section, depending on whether they're doing the 3-act structure or just even... Honestly, I actually think this 3-act structure is kind of dumb for RPGs, depending on the type of RPG you're running. Because you should have as many crises as you feel you need. And just kind of, it goes, it's almost like a climax and then down, climax, down, etc.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a good way of thinking about it. I think, and good way to break it up. Again, I'm still trying to figure all this out, so I've been reading a lot, but I haven't come to a good conclusion yet.
it also comes down to things like
for me,
having an idea about how many acts are in your, or how many parts are in your adventure. That's a good question too. How many sessions you're trying to aim for. These are all definitely questions you just kind of ask and see what you get, because you ask them to yourself. Will you always get the right answer? Well, you're asking it to yourself. You're just trying to do your best to have a good idea about what you need to set up. And the good thing, I'm going to tell you this, the great thing about planning for a campaign is you can not only change your mind a lot, after every session, you have an idea of where and when you're changing that mind, what to do.
This actually goes back to that thing I showed last week, where it was how I said, here are the ideas. I had the things your players can discover. I forget what I called it. Hold on. I called it the secrets and clues. Right. So the secrets and clues, I literally mentioned how I had the red or the green, yellow, and red sections, and how the whole point is that the green sections are the ones that I've told the players, yellow ones that I partially told, and red are ones that I've decided aren't true anymore or don't matter anymore. And that's kind of the thing. I can literally decide this was true at this time. The players never figured it out, so it's no longer true. I'm actually going to make it so it's, instead of him being a brother, I'm going to make it his cousin, because they didn't figure it out at the time. They didn't investigate right, and so it's not true. It doesn't matter. The truth is relative.
Yeah. That is a very good way of saying it. Truth is relative. So you can change things between sessions. You can add new things. Again, depending on what your players are discovering what they do in a session, what they discover in a session, all these different things can alter where you go with a lot of your decision making and direction that you do for much of your adventures. And once you've had a session, hey, you got some ideas of what to do next time. And you can just add. You're adding layers to your campaign prep. Every time. Certainly speaking, you set up a bunch beforehand, but then you use those sessions to make layers on top of it and plan more and build on top of it. And it is always going to be a malleable story for you. Just be ready to make it malleable. And this comes down to the same way like with pre-made adventures. You can always change something in them. It's your adventure. It's just that, when you're building something on your own, it's a little easier.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, if you consider, working in a D&D adventure, on a D&D adventure, is more like working with clay or a digital art program versus drawing a physical, art piece and working with marble. Like, those are like writing a book or, those kind of things, whereas like clay and digital art where you can erase as much as you want, you can resculpt, you can do whatever. That's honestly, you need to keep it like, it changes. It's ever changing. You don't like the face, you change the face. Like halfway through, you change the face,
Yep.
And
and
that's why it's so hard to plan, because I want a way that organizes that and then can also be changed. And that's why I have a problem. Because I know that's part of it, and I want to figure out a way to organize it. That's why I say I don't have a way of making a overarching campaign. It's because I don't have a way of making something I can refer back to, but also change.
Mm-hmm. There are, again, because
in a structured format. I can always just change a document.
There are challenges to a campaign always. You're never going to deny that one. So it's sort of like building and maintaining a campaign of any kind will have challenges for you. But it's like you just have to kind of get an idea of what you're doing, what you want to do with the story, and then just honestly do it.
Mm-hmm.
Just do it. Just put together what you need. You will know.
Do it.
Yeah, you will know what will be helpful to your campaign.
And I'm actually going to say this. Probably the best way to figure out how to run a campaign is just to run a few of them.
Mm-hmm.
Just don't try and do really long things, but do a few. It's like you don't have to make it. You're not going to do a great job because again, it's very very personal to you. I mean, even a session is personal. It's what helps you run the game better.
Yeah. It is always going to be a interaction between you and your players that will help determine the story and what's going on in the adventure. We've talked about this constantly. It's a co-op thing. It's not just you, the players, you're working together to tell whatever tale is going to be told. Yes, you're setting up a lot of it, but they are the major driving force, always. So keep that in mind, and that helps it too. But again, it also comes down to it's most games. You have to understand that even as their major driving force, you do still have to also respect that how much individuals like them can change the world too. It's sort of like it's that balancing act that you have to do, and a lot of these campaigns revolve around that balancing act. It's the kind of things of you breaking down to other topics that we've talked about here. If you're dealing with someone that wants to be a murder hobo, or players that do that, usually the world will turn against them because that's the results of the world and the results of what they're doing. Yes, that's a much more negative result on it, but it kind of is that example of like the law and important figures and maybe very powerful figures start coming after them because they're killing everybody or stuff like that. They become the villains in that case. That's an extreme example, and usually with bad players, because you don't really want those kind of players. But it does give you that idea that the characters are effects that ripple through things, and it is up to you to guide them, but it's also up to you to, not let them take over the story. You're telling the story, they're affecting the story, they aren't running the story. Does that make sense? Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Sometimes I say things, and I don't always know if I expressed them in the way I wanted to. Do you have anything else to add to this? I think that hits most.
I mean, that kind of covers everything. I guess if I want to do like a wrap up comment, it's figure it out for yourself. Don't. Honestly, really just look up how other people look up how. I mean, really trial and error, but also study and just looking up how other things do it. Like how to do a session is a lot better documented because of the way it works. Like there's only so much you can do in a session, but a campaign is harder because it's kind of like asking someone how to write a book. I mean, like they teach you in school, like the 5-section thing of, but honestly, if you read books, you realize that's not how they work.
And sometimes you can get away with a little bit of that writing it session to session, but there's a big old but here. Even if you are sticking to a lot more session by session writing, you still need to do some of this back end look. Like I can give a good example. Records of Evil was very session to session, but you know what? I had an overall storyline still. It just came up weird natural points in time in the session by session stuff. So it was sort of like, oh, I can bring in parts of the main story here, we can start working on it, kind of things like that. So that was one I did not do as major planning for the overall campaign. But it still was there. Because if not, you would have played forever and got nowhere.
Yeah.
That's kind of where you have to do it. It's all about that, making sure, you have an end goal. Because as much as it's fun to play a lot of times, there really does have to be an end to the story.
Yep.
Usually. Now, granted, you can tell another story afterwards, but that's another thing.
I mean, going until the story's burnt out is a way to play. And, I think it's not as satisfying. It's much better to wrap things up, but at the same time, sometimes it just doesn't happen. And sometimes you might just not want it to happen.
Exactly. There's a lot of situational things in the game, so just keep all that in. Alright, how about we talk about our week in game? Woo! So, we didn't have Joe's game this week. I don't think I did anything tabletop related until Wednesday. All that was it. Did you do anything beforehand? Before then?
No.
Okay. So the Mist Fall of Avanswell. There's a player there. Go check that out. It's fun. It's up on YouTube now. Basically, our group there got to the village they were seeking. Met a man who was horribly disfigured. And then proceeded to start investigating the area. There's something weird going on. What is? How? They don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it was weird. I think there's a lot of nothing. Honestly, there's a lot of emptiness. It probably could have hinted that things were empty a little bit sooner in certain situations, but
it was one of those things that, it's trying to balance out what I was trying to seek for the entire thing, too.
Yeah.
So, I think it was okay. Could have been better. There could also have been much worse.
Yeah, I'm not saying it was bad. I'm just saying it's like, okay, I felt like we did a little bit of pointless looking, at one point.
you did do pointless looking, but like it was this weird thing that there were opportunities to find things, you just didn't find. Kind of
got it. You
Um,
might want to remember that not all of us have good perception.
well, I mean, like, it's not a huge difference between a lot of you, but it was also trying to figure out, like, God, I think that party sheet with all those stats is so nice to see there, because then I'm like,
yeah,
I can reference
you didn't
all
have
this.
that. Like, I don't think you didn't notice that until I pointed out that session, did you?
Yeah, no, I had no idea about that, so I didn't even see that till the end there, and I'm like, oh, this is so helpful to know. So that was really nice to see that, which would help a lot.
Yeah, learning how to run Foundry is also nice.
Yeah, no, I think I've been getting better at running Foundry and getting better at, because again, I think it's been a twofold problem, because it's one, learning to run Foundry, and two, getting back into running Pathfinder 2. And I think those are the two things that I have to kind of balance out the two of them, because it's sort of like, it's an extra challenge. It's sort of like, oh, I haven't run 2E in like quite a while. And also, I have not run the remaster, which is still mostly 2E, but there are slight differences here and there that I might not notice right away. Also, so there's little extra challenges in top. So again, I'm having a fun time. I'm having a fun time, and it sounds like everybody's enjoying it. Did you do anything on the back end of the week tabletop? I ended up not doing anything.
I did have the game earlier today. So Alt's game, and honestly, this will go real fast because basically we had one giant combat. It got really hairy there for a second, because basically, so we had the solution. We were given like a potion that would like cleanse the evil tree that was making the forest go wacky. However, trying to get there, we got hit by some creatures and started fighting them. And then more creatures came out. And then more creatures came, and basically the DM, it became kind of pretty obvious pretty quickly that things were just going to keep showing up. Like new things were going to show up literally every round until we did something about it. So like the person who had the potion had to rush to the tree, and once they did that, like everything went still. All the creatures now ran away, and all the trees stopped moving and such. Then this weird little, then this evil spirit came out that was like a bone creature and started attacking us, and that was like, kind of the final boss.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and that was basically the whole session.
Okay, cool. So it was, again, combat heavy. Those happen.
Yep.
So you overcame the challenge.
I did pretty decent with my spell choices. I mean, I basically did blur, ran around a bit. The problem is I'm slow, because small creatures in 2E literally have half the movement as medium creatures.
Yes, a classic.
So like I wasn't able to rush ahead. Thankfully, not everyone did. Otherwise, I would have been probably dead.
No, you would have been fine, left behind. Don't worry about it.
My favorite part though was I was like, because basically I didn't even get to hit the skeleton thing, because the skeleton thing was at the tree and I had to get to the tree. So once all this, and I was caught up in combat in the other area. So once that all ended, I started running towards the tree. Everyone else was there fighting it. And the funniest part was I had to go around a wall of fire that someone put up earlier to try and prevent people from getting to the guy who was trying to put the potion on the tree. And unlike in Pathfinder, you can't make it so it doesn't target your allies. It just targets everyone, And also, once you put it up, you can't put it down. You can't just dismiss things. So basically, everyone else just ran around it just fine, but I was like running around it, and the funniest part was the moment I got around it, it disappeared. Like its time ran out, and I'm just like,
Oof.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, but it was otherwise a pretty fun fight campaign or fight session.
Okay. Sounds pretty fun. Alright. Well, I guess that sounds like the end of our discussion for this week. Thank you, Worm, for joining me today.
No problem.
I guess you can give your shout-outs and information of people where to find you, what you're doing, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I'm DiamondWyrm. You can find me on twitch.tv/DiamondWyrm or at DiamondWyrm on Twitter and Blue Sky. I should be streaming tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. PDT.
Okay. Yes, I'm Dracovin. This is going to be up on my channel on Twitch, over on my YouTube. Please check out the rest of my stuff. Make sure to go check out Worm, of course. I'll be back definitely on Tuesday for the normal schedule. I had to cancel out stuff during the day for yesterday, so if I can arrange it, which I might be able to, maybe tomorrow or Monday, I'll do a small bonus stream, because I had one more recorded for the week to do it. If I can't, I'll just push the recording for next week. I'm okay with that. Things like that happen. Hey, you know, like schedule stuff. It happens. But I'll keep people informed of that. Check out my social media for that stuff. Mostly my Discord. Anyway, I'll be back next week. Warren might join me next week. Momo might join us next week. Regardless, thank you for joining us for Discussing Tabletop. I hope you really enjoyed. Check out Fall Rabbitswell Wednesdays at 8. Check out all the streams. I'll be also doing some gaming and tabletop-related streams during the week. Check out my social media for when those are kind of live in the schedule. Yeah, I guess until everybody can join us next time, see you later, and have a great weekend. Farewell, goodbye!